Hey guys, how you doing? David Hess here with Paydirt DFS. This is Slate of Mind Week 6, the show where we talk about early game theory, early roster construction, and how we think we could take advantage of the mistakes the field might make to actually make more money. This is my co-host Ryan, who's in the Paydirt Discord. Um, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good. I think just as a precursor to the show, I should explain that I'm going to be potentially watching some of the Phillies game out of that eye, and I have Phillies gear on tonight. So people, if they're watching this after the fact, and I start swearing at my TV, will have some context as to why. Because I'm
Yeah,
going to
for
be in
anybody that
absolute
doesn't know, is
baseball hell tonight.
For anybody that doesn't know as well, if you've missed past episodes, Ryan was once coached by me. I taught him DFS. He paid me for sessions. One of my most successful students ever, potentially more successful than I am. And so like we just started naturally like talking strategy with each other. And these are essentially just our recorded sessions, the conversations that we already had. So, how'd you do
Yeah,
last
we've
week,
been
Ryan?
doing. Yeah, I was just gonna say we've been doing this for years, so I think recording it just made sense. It was like we both enjoy this, and I've gotten so much out of it from improving my play, but also just enjoying it, which is part of why I do it. So, how did I do last week? I played. I want to say like four or five lineups. I did some single entry, three max, smaller field stuff because I was traveling, so I didn't have an optimizer or the portfolio manager. My best finish was, let's see, I think I finished, I don't know why I can't find it, 25th out of 1,000, essentially, in a single entry. Scored 207, was really happy with the lineup. It's the lineup I least wanted to play. Because I went through the week identifying some of the stacks and constructions, and each lineup had leverage, direct leverage in it. And this lineup was like, okay, I'm going to play Justin Fields and skinny stack with Garrett Wilson, and also added in the tight end sort of begrudgingly. I didn't think the Fields chalk was great, but and it really wouldn't have been, except they were getting blown out so bad that they just had junk time touchdowns and passing yards towards the end of the game. So I feel like it was kind of lucky to get there. Um, but the cool part about the lineup I built was that I used Chase, very low on Jamar Chase and Amon-Ra St. Brown for um, a different strategy off of using JSN, who wasn't in the lineup.
Jamar
Um,
Chase was, if I'm not mistaken, also a pivot, right? That you actually did like a late swap, a late swap.
No, I actually late swapped Chase in another lineup that ended up min cashing. This was my intention to use this all along because of how much other chalk I was eating with Fields and Rico
Got it.
Dowdle. Yeah. So I
Yeah,
had a
I
good. I mean, I had a.
actually. Go ahead.
So I was just gonna say I had a slightly profitable weekend. Was happy with some of my constructions. That's it.
Yeah, I was almost profitable until I just went to check my lineup to talk about it and saw that there was a stat correction that actually costed me another $40. Um,
Oh no, God!
I
Absolutely
had
awful
finished
feeling.
initially seventh place. I'm now in 11th. They took some points in the Titans defense. But on that, there was a afternoon slate. I overstacked the Tampa Bay game, which I didn't realize Baker was going to be 6% on a four-game slate, or I might have, just not overstacked and played Lad McConkey over Chris Godwin, which would have put me in first place.
Right.
Because for reference, with the overstack, I played Baker, White, Godwin, and Igbuka with
Yep.
JSN. And so, like, really, the optimal play would have been to play one of the Chargers receivers over Chris Godwin. But because I didn't know that he'd be 6%, I played all of them. I also
And
hit
you did
on
not play Rashad
1%
White.
Calvin Ridley for a 131-yard game. And then
That was
Sam Laporte in
awesome.
it as well, who was like the least owned version of the Lions, so that it kind of popped off.
Yeah,
So,
and you faded Rashad White like you because you stacked the Bucks passing game, right?
no, I played him with White.
Oh, you played him with White. Okay.
Yeah, I played the whole offense, essentially just saying that Tampa Bay would score a ton of points, which they did. Which is really nice, by the way, on smaller slates. On smaller slates, a lot of people will still play by the rules and do like a quarterback with two pass catchers. But if you can
Mm-hmm.
identify which game is going to pop and play like six of them, If you pick the right game, you win oftentimes. So just like a side note on small slates.
Yeah, and some of the other games that were garnering a lot more ownership failed. I'm trying to remember in the late slate what was where the chalk condensed around. Um,
It was the Detroit game,
yeah, Detroit, Cincinnati,
which
and
didn't fail really. It was just that the thing with Detroit is very often one person doesn't just pop off.
right,
It's like it's so spread out. Amon Ross scores a touchdown, but at his price, you don't get there. Jameer Gibbs scores a touchdown at his price, he doesn't get there.
right,
Jameson Williams did have like 4 points. He like legit failed.
yeah, and he was like an awesome play.
Yeah, I mean, like he's one of those guys that you just play every single week and you hope, and you
And
know that
he's
he's
gonna
going to burn your
smash the
lineup
ceiling at some
15
point.
times a
Yeah,
year. But on that one week, you should win some money. Hopefully you pick the
I
right
mean, I
stack.
think yeah, yeah. There's so much in the Lions' offense. It's not condensed. It's spread out so much. So yeah, those were. I don't think those were the winning lineups in the late window. It's just too much you had to get right. And Amon Ra's the natural stacking partner with Goff, and he had 21 points and underwhelmed. You didn't want him at his price for that. So
I hate playing Amon Ross St. Brown, by the way, because I feel like he needs like 12 catches to get there.
he's Detroit's version of Lad McConkey.
Drake London, like they're all the same dude. Michael Pittman,
Slot. Do they all play out of
like
the slot?
no, but they are all volume catchers where they're A dots like 8 yards in instead of like 14 or 15. So a lot of times you don't get like the big play with them. And so like for those really expensive guys to get there like that, they need to score multiple touchdowns or have like 10 to 12 targets.
Right, because their air yards are low, so you're just counting on the volume and the touchdown equity.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So I don't typically play those guys when they're chalk and expensive.
yeah,
I played a lot of Jameer Gibbs last week, which didn't pay off, by the way, but like, it's how I handled it.
yeah.
Cool,
How did you
man.
play?
Well, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask if you had any thoughts on the overall slate and how your constructions were and what your approach was to it. If there was anything, let's say, were there any lessons that we took away from last week?
I actually think I played it really well, man. So, like, as you know, they don't know, but I fully faded Rashad White on main slate.
I
I
know.
played
I couldn't believe it.
absolutely
I kept looking.
zero. I
Yeah.
played 40% Rico Dowdle, though, because I thought that he had a better matchup and, like, less people wanted to play him. Um, so, yeah, I mean, I played a lot of Justin Herbert, and, like, Herbert didn't really get there. So like maybe not the best stacks. I said early on though that Seattle Tampa Bay is like one of my favorite games, and then like I kind of talked myself off of them throughout the week. And so like it really just came to like I felt like it was the right builds, but I didn't have enough belief in them, I guess.
Okay.
So like no, not really any huge lessons for me, man. Honestly, like I said, it was one of those weeks where like I felt like I played it right. It just wasn't the right combination.
Got it. Okay.
Maybe I wish I would have played less Justin Fields. Because like I essentially took 25% of my lineups and said Justin Fields is going to get there, and then I played zero Jets on all the others.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, I
yeah,
begrudgingly played Fields, and that was my best performing lineup. So I think in smaller field that was fine. I think something I did well was each lineup. I only built like hand built a few of them. Each of them told a story where, in some cases, um, I had pieces from the Indianapolis passing game. So Jonathan Taylor wasn't getting there. Taylor smashed. So in that circumstance, I
yeah. I was gonna
needed
say I actually would have liked to have more Jonathan Taylor. We actually talked about him on the show as like the only thing to pay up for, and of course he blew the slate up. So
yeah. Yeah, you also had some exposure to Miami, which was pretty cool, and a condensed passing offense. Those stats
yeah, I played
performed
a
pretty
lot. I
well.
actually played 35% Darren Waller last week.
Darren
So
Waller, more like it.
But yeah, man. I guess as far as the week 6 slate, what's like your first thought? What's like the first thing that you were looking at? Kind of like where'd you get started, and what's that looking like?
I always start with the team totals and the NFL research sheets on Paydirt. Just want to get a sense for sort of what the overall picture of the slate looks like. But there's plenty of games with high totals. There's 4 games that are right around 50. There's some really nice implied passing touchdowns. But for me, you just have to acknowledge last week there was unlimited value at running back. In particular, we just had so many cheap running backs that projected well. Pricing has gotten tighter this week, and there is going to be more fragile chalk, and it's going to be in the mid-range. And there's going to be some risk aversion in some of these lineups. And I think with some fragile chalk in the mid-range, it's going to give us an opportunity to have some different constructions there and find alternatives to, value plays that may not project as well. So that's just the biggest thing is there's last week you could literally have 4K guys in your running back. And this week you're looking at, I think, a lot of ownership in the 5,000 to 6,000 range. And I think could be a little bit of a sharper week.
Yeah, so it's funny. I started off thinking the same thing, by the way. So I was first looking. I think Puka and CMC are probably the two best plays on the slate. They're really hard to get to though, especially together. You almost can't. You have to pick one or the other, unless you play a cheap quarterback. And so to me, there's one of two build paths that's going to happen in form as chalk, and I'm just going to do whichever one doesn't. By the way, people are either going to play balanced builds where you have a whole bunch of 6K players with upside. And you say CMC and Puka probably don't get there, but Devontae Adams and Kendrick Bourne might. Or they're going to play Bryce Young and Joe Flacco and Spencer Rattlers maybe I think the field's going to go that way. By the way, I think Bryce Young's probably the chalkiest quarterback on the slate by the end of the week. He's back in the Justin Fields position, playing against the Dallas Cowboys. I think we see Bryce Young, Tedero McMillan, CMC, and Puka. I think that 4 combination will probably be the absolute chalkiest thing that anybody plays by the end of the week.
Okay. I knew Puka and CMC would garner a lot of ownership. I was curious if Bryce Young would. I mean, it's the nut matchup.
Like I said, it's just as you go down the list, man, there is no value. We don't have a single running back under 6K that you could play. You could coin flip 55 and 5,500, 5,400. Haskins or Vito for the Chargers and hope for the best. Outside of that, there's 0 playable running backs under 6K. And so the point that everybody's going to get to is, do you want to play cheap quarterbacks or cheap wide receivers? And I think just sharper as a whole is cheap quarterbacks because they still have a higher price range or a higher floor than cheap receivers do. And so with Joe Flacco's 4K, by the way, and it's starting for Cincinnati. So you can also play Joe Flacco and Jamar Chase for 11K. So that's something that I think is very plausible. I think we'll probably see cheap quarterbacks and cheap tight ends this week with balanced builds to get up to CMC and Puka.
Okay. So that's going to be the construction we're going to see most of. It's going to be cheap quarterback. It's going to be Bryce, Tedero, Puka, CMC, mid-range throughout the rest.
Yeah, or Flacco, Chase, maybe even Flacco naked. Honestly, people might play him without Chase. But I think Flacco at 4K is going to get a lot of ownership this week because there's such little value across the board. I bet Flacco's 10% owned.
Really?
And they're playing Green Bay, so I think it's possibly bad chalk. I will say if
awful chalk.
If no one's playing them, I'm going to. I will say that. But if they're chalky, I'm not touching them.
I'm not playing Flacco against Green Bay either way.
Man, at 4K though, all you'd have to do is score 16 fantasy points, and you could now afford anything that you want.
Yeah. Have you looked at the pressure matchup for?
No, because since Browning was the quarterback, Browning's the one that's going to show all week. We're not going to get Flacco.
Okay. I mean, we can just take Flacco's
bad. We can just assume that Joe Flacco is bad. But if we think that Green Bay is a good play, and a lot of people do, Josh Jacobs is also going to be chalk. You could play Flacco, Chase, and Josh Jacobs, all 3 together, just like Justin Fields last week, where Flacco is probably going to suck for 2.5 quarters, but he is going to get garbage time to rack up 15 fantasy points. And so, I think it's a really interesting play. Like I said, if nobody plays it. But if it's chalk and everybody's doing it, I'm not going to join them.
No. So, and that's actually probably my, and I don't want to maybe get too far ahead of ourselves, but that game I am interested in being pretty underweight to as a whole, because of that dynamic. Um, the so we have the Bengals, which are everyone knows a disaster already. Their offensive line is awful, and we have a new quarterback who's traded over to play for them and to learn the playbook in a couple days. I mean, I don't know how substantial that is. We've seen Flacco do okay like this before, but with a non-existent offensive line and the pass rush that's expected to be there, which is actually supposed to be the second most pressure in the league against a guy with zero mobility, and people are going to have a significant investment in that game with a spread of 14. My sort of, early week idea is that I don't want to be heavily invested in that game that I don't think is going to be competitive.
Sounds like a perfect spot for Josh Jacobs, though.
Yeah, I think Jacobs is the best part of that game. I mean, if I think it looked to me, I mean, I know ownership is pretty early, but it looks like Green Bay passing game is also garnering a little bit of ownership. I mean, I'm interested in some Jacobs, but not overwhelmingly.
I think Jacobs a great play. I'm curious. Like I said, so much of this is like on these early talks. I'm just going to talk through like good plays.
Yeah.
They become either better plays if nobody's playing them, like potentially best
Mhm.
play on the slate. Like if everybody goes CMC and Josh Jacobs has no ownership, I don't think that happens, by the way, because Jacobs is so much cheaper, like 1,300 or something.
Yeah.
But like Jacobs is an amazing matchup and an amazing game script. He scored a touchdown for like 27 games straight. Like Josh Jacobs is great. I also, in that game, funny enough, have a lot of interest in Dontavian Wicks. He's
Okay.
3,700.
Okay.
He's got the best matchup out of all of them. He's actually second on the team in air yards. Since Jaden Reed got hurt, he's essentially in the Jaden Reed role. And so, like we've talked about, like cheap wide receivers or cheap tight ends and cheap quarterbacks. There's a couple of cheap wide receivers, with Dontavian Wicks being one of them that, like, I think I could have interest in this week.
Okay. Yeah, I mean at 3,700, and one explosive play or a little bit of volume, you could get there with him. It's just the overall passing attack. I couldn't see myself stacking Green Bay. Um,
I also like Tucker Craft.
yeah, I want to take a look at his target share. I mean, I think it's pretty high. And I think if people are going to stack Green Bay, they're going to do it just with Tucker Craft because he's the most predictable passing partner. Um,
If they're chalk by the end of the week, I'll eat my sock.
okay.
He's like Jordan Love's like 6.2K, man. He said like zero like games up there. Like I said, if you play Jordan
Yeah.
Love, you're essentially saying I'm not playing Puka and CMC.
Okay. Got it.
So
So that's
like I
pretty
say,
unlikely. Yeah.
yeah. So like I initially thought the 6K quarterbacks would be chalk until I realized Puka and CMC with no value. So like you're literally going to choose whether you want to play a cheap quarterback with Puka and CMC or a 6K quarterback with a mid range lineup or a mid range quarterback with cheap receivers to get the CMC and Puka. Those are like
Okay.
the three build paths that like you're going to have access to this week.
Okay. Where do you think the most of your ownership's going to be going?
Whichever one that no one else does.
Okay.
I think that they're all good. I think they
Well, we
all have
think
upside.
yeah.
If I had to guess, cheap wide receivers are going to be mostly unowned this week. And so,
And the
like,
value
we're
is
just
going to
going
come
to take
from
a gamble on a
quarterback and
couple of
tight ends.
these. Yeah, I think Darren Waller at 4K. Njoku's
Yeah.
3,500. He got 9 targets last week. Isaiah Likely's back. He's 2,800 bucks. You got Flacco and Bryce Young, both sub 5K. I think
Mm-hmm.
all of those guys garner a lot of ownership.
Okay.
And then people play like Chris Olave, 5,100. There's like a couple like 5K guys that like are going to stack ownership, essentially, so you can get to two pay up guys. Like I said, I think most of them will be Puka and CMC, but you might have Jacobs and Puka. You might have Devin Achane and Puka. You might have Jamar Chase and CMC. I mean, like there's a couple of different combinations there, but like for the most part, I think that's going to be the build that everybody gets to because it's the most comfortable.
Yeah. I mean, clicking CMC and Puka is going to feel comfortable. Have you tried building the lineup with them yet?
Yeah,
And Bryce Young, is it doable?
yeah, it's stupid.
Okay.
The Joe Flacco lineup I built, just for reference, let me talk through this real quick. um,
Yes. Tell me more about 4K Joe Flacco, who's going to be absolutely murdered by Micah Parsons this weekend.
So you're able to build Joe Flacco, Rico Dowdle, Rashad White, Jamar Chase, Puka Nakua, Devontae Wicks, David Njoku, and Christian McCaffrey all together. 3 pay-ups.
Okay. And I would imagine, oh geez, Betts hit a triple. I didn't even know the Dodgers had fans. There were people there waving blue towels. Okay, so if Bryce is the option who's more expensive than Flacco, you're probably getting 2 of those, which is going to be CMC or Puka together,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
And then for reference, just I talked to this more. I built it like a 6K lineup, and you can only really get to Josh Jacobs and Puka, but you can't get to CMC. And like I think that's the thing, right? So like the big decision on this slate is going to be: do you want to play CMC? Do you want to play Puka? Do you want to play both?
Mm-hmm. And the most popular option is going to be both.
I think so, just because we have the cheap
Yeah.
quarterbacks. Like I said, if we
Okay.
didn't have Flacco show up, then like Bryce Young would have been Justin Fields last week with like 25% ownership. Like I'm pretty sure of it. And people probably would even talk themselves into like Spencer Rattler. Um, like you can play Rattler and Olave for 10K. So
Yeah.
like people probably talk themselves into that as well.
I can
But
see
like Joe
talking myself
Flacco
into
showing
it.
up at 4K, man, like I think he ends up with so much ownership just because there's no other value on the slate.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be happy not to play him then. I think it's interesting though that we know. I'm just thinking kind of early week constructions. Have you thought about from a construction standpoint what you might want to do different?
It's hard to know, like I said, until I actually see it. Like I said, if I had to guess, the biggest thing will be cheap wide receivers are mostly unknown. You've got guys like Kendrick Bourne, Malik Washington, Alec Ayamanor, Torrey Horton, Dontavian Wicks. Like all of these guys are like guys that you can put as a part of your stack that should have like no ownership. That will essentially allow you to do the same thing as the cheap quarterbacks, but they come with a wider range of outcomes, so people are going to be more afraid of them.
Well, let's not be afraid of it.
No, like I said, I think there's a lot of popular stacks where there's some merit to playing some of those guys. Speaking of stacks, we kind of talked through that. What's your early look and like who you think your favorite stacks would be?
Yeah, I did some of this. Um, so one I'm interested in, which I think it would be definitely a unique construction from what we just talked about, is I'm pretty interested in Buffalo, and I'm not sure if I would put them as my favorite, but I would say Buffalo, New England, Dallas, the Seahawks. Let's see what else I had here. I had Carolina. I could see myself looking for creative ways to access Carolina too. Just we know that matchup with the Cowboys defense is really good. And probably some New Orleans as well. I mean, I've been talking about. I got to think through Green Bay a little bit more. I know I made some kind of sweeping statements that I wouldn't play them. I just think that game environment's not going to be competitive. The passing game's not going to get pushed. I watched a fair amount of the Bengals Lions fourth quarter last week and just watched them go into cruise control with David Montgomery and stop passing the ball. So, I have some hesitation there combined with the pressure rate. So, yeah, I would say Buffalo, New England, Dallas, and Seahawks are probably the 4 that I'm most interested in.
Speaking of that, I actually on the show last week talked about doing golf David Montgomery and a pass catcher, and golf Montgomery and Laporta would have been the best way to play that game.
That's wild. I mean, that's very counterintuitive though. The running back that doesn't get, passing work, but
it's because of just what you said. If you remember back to the show, I said, if we think they own them, golf and a pass catcher is going to get there through 2.5, 3 quarters, and they're going to switch to David Montgomery, and you're going to get a full quarter of David Montgomery.
and that's one of the reasons I'm less interested in Josh Jacobs. Potentially this week is I think that game could be so uncompetitive. We see Emmanuel Wilson 4-yard runs. I think that's the primary backup there. E.
I think that Joe
Wilson.
Flacco without a playbook is a huge upgrade on Jake Browning for what it's worth. And the other important part to remember with that is that the Lions pieces are all expensive, and outside of Josh Jacobs, all of the Green Bay pieces are really cheap. And
Yeah,
so if
but it
you get
also is
20
not a
points from
condensed
them,
offense either.
that's true. You've got to get it right. But like I would almost guarantee that one of those pass catchers are in the optimal this week. Whether
Yeah, is
it's
there any?
Jacobs, Kraft, Daubs, or Wicks, or even Golden. They just came out of their bye
Yeah.
week. Golden might have more
Mhm.
of a role than he's had in the past. He might be scheming some stuff up for him. Like we see rookies really turn it on after the bye weeks a lot of the times. So like it's definitely a spot where like it's pick your poison. But like I think all of those dudes are in like a really good spot. So
Okay. Yeah, I think I'll definitely want to dig into the target share for Green Bay, see if, you know, can help us to make some decisions. I mean, if you're playing 60 lineups, which is not unusual for you, that really gives you the opportunity to, spread that out and attack Green Bay in a number of ways. Um, you can do that too with single entry and three max. You just have to be willing to be wrong, which I'm going to be okay with this week. Because I know in our last podcast, I think you were sort of challenging me to be okay with a little bit of uncertainty. And you don't have to get crazy in smaller field contests, but you know, I'll be willing to incorporate some uncertainty in those lineups too.
yeah. So as far as my stacks, I've got four that really stand out. I have
Yeah,
eight
tell
that
me
are
what you like.
playable. It's really going to
Okay.
depend. So like I'm going to go over the four that I'm prioritizing. I'm
Okay.
hoping one of these four have zero ownership. If that happens, I'm going to go pretty much all in on them. So
Okay.
those four are the Rams, where I have a lot of interest in playing Puka, but with Stafford.
Okay.
I like that thought a lot. I don't think anybody will play Stafford. He's like 6,200. It's the most expensive he's ever been, but he's coming off back-to-back 30-point fantasy point games. And we just saw C.J. Stroud absolutely shred this Baltimore team last week.
Yeah. Without being pushed
Um,
at all.
yeah, Yep, and I think Sean McVay likes to give it to him. I don't think he really takes his foot off the gas at any point. And I really even think you'd essentially not be playing CMC, that you can play Stafford, Kyron Williams, and Puka, and kind of set up in the same way that we talked about golf with David Montgomery. And I think that that's got a lot of interest because also in the running back matchups, the Rams have the second best matchup on the slate.
Yes. Yes.
And so, like, I think that you can stack all of the Rams, and it's totally, like, doable. My next one is Jordan Love and the Packers. Now, obviously, I think it's a great spot, but like we were talking about, it's harder because you almost don't know where the production comes from. It's like if you were building that, I think you start with Jordan Love and then either Josh Jacobs or Tucker Kraft plus a pass
Yeah.
catcher, and you just hope it's the right one. Um, I have a lot of interest, like I said, in Dontavian Wicks, honestly, just because he's the cheapest and his air yards are high, and all you need is one big catch, and like it kind of pays off. Um, but that doesn't mean it's the best. Like I said, it's just something I've looked at.
Yeah.
My next one's Drake May, I think. But again,
Yeah.
the problem with Drake May is that there's Hunter Henry and then a whole bunch of nothing. So like you can play the corpse of
Well,
Stephon Diggs. Booty had like one big game and then you never saw him again. Demario Douglas gets 6 targets every 4 weeks. And so like you could really play May and Henry and just hope for the best, or May and Diggs. But it's another one where like you just don't know where the production's really going to come from.
yeah. I was thinking Diggs and Henry would be the two stacking partners I'd want to use for the
Those are the two that
Patriots.
I have down. But like I said, but
Yeah.
like Diggs, even we're hoping that it was a sign of things to come. But like we've seen one big week out of Patriots receivers before, and then they fade into nothingness. Just like I said, Booty, Demario Douglas, like we Hunter Henry, we've seen all those guys have a big game this year, but we haven't seen two from any of them.
Yeah, but I
Um,
think I think just counterpoint to that, Diggs has a track record of being an alpha wide receiver, garnering a large target share, and just being much better than the booty. Who's kind of booty.
but he just tore his ACL, and he's 31 now, and probably a little slower.
Okay.
So, like I said, we'll
He
see.
looked
Like I
all
said,
right.
I
He
think
looked all
I
right
think the
Sunday.
Patriots are in a good spot, though. I think it's a good spot. I'm curious to see what happens with it. My last one of the big four is Seattle and Sam Darnold. So I told you that there's a couple cheap wide receivers I like. One of those is Torrey Horton,
Or
the rookie
yeah.
from Seattle. I think that you can play Darnold, JSN, and Horton relatively easy, and in that matchup they bleed fantasy points to outside wide receivers, which typically in this offense we see Jason and Horton on the outsides and Cooper Kupp plays in the slot. And so like I
Yeah.
don't want to play Cooper Kupp. I want like almost no Cooper Kupp, but I think that Torrey Horton is an add-on to that to get a cheap part of your stack makes a lot of sense, and then also gives you that roster build that we talked about by having a cheap receiver. So those are like my four big ones. Like I said, I would love for one of those to come in like really, really low owned, and like I'm just gonna smash it. But outside of that, I'll like speed run these a little bit. I also like Dallas, Tampa Bay, Miami, and Cincinnati.
Oh, Cincinnati.
Like
Yeah,
I
I mean
said,
we had
it's
a
just so
lot of
cheap.
the
It's just
same.
so cheap
Yeah.
that like if no one's gonna play it, like I will.
Okay.
Like Joe Flacco sucks. It's not a great game, but like if Green Bay is gonna be really chalk and no one's gonna play 4K Joe Flacco, like I will.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to think through that a little bit. I need to think through that game as a whole, some more. I just from it, if it's going to garner a lot of ownership, that game, I'm going to lean towards it not being competitive, and not being something I want to be
Almost
targeting
said
a
the
lot of
same thing though,
ceilings.
man. And you saw what Jamar Chase did last week with Jake Brown.
Yeah, and that was a much different matchup. The Lions defense, their passing defense, their pressure rate, much better matchup, and they
By the
were at
time a
home.
team's up 30 points, they're not going all out on defense anymore. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Like I say, it's just like the Jets and Dallas, right? If you think they thump them, and as long as Cincinnati doesn't take their starters out, it doesn't matter.
I mean Zach Taylor's fighting for his job, so and they just traded assets to acquire Joe Flacco for some reason, so I don't think they're pulling anybody. Listen, I could be wrong about that. I just as I'm thinking about ceiling that I want to target, I want competitive game environments, ones where they're going to be pushing, there's going to be lots of scoring. You and I both landed on the Seahawks, by the way. Yeah, I don't know if everyone's caught up to how bad the Jacksonville passing defense is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. And like I said, the other three, man, are really just spots where we talked about chalk, right? We talked about Carolina. And so
Yeah,
to get access to Carolina, you can play Dallas. You did that last week. It worked really well. I don't think people are going to continue to do it until CD Lamb comes back either. And so,
yeah,
like, I'm really happy playing like Dak with Pickens and Ferguson, and then bringing it back with Chuba or Tet.
yeah.
Um, Christian McCaffrey. We think he's going to be chalk. Is he going to be chalk with Baker Mayfield though? Probably not. And so, like, you can not play Puka Nakua and play Igbuka instead. Baker and Igbuka with CMC, and you have a whole different roster construction than everybody else. And then
Yeah.
Miami, I think Darren Waller's going to be mega chalk. I don't think anybody will play Tua though. I also have a lot of interest in Malik Washington. I know that he sucked last week. He had 4 catches for 0 yards, which is absolutely insane. Um,
Wait, how is that possible? Well,
his A dot was horrendous. Like
yeah,
a lot of his catches were behind the line of scrimmage.
that's how they
Um,
operate their offense a lot. I mean, they've tried to mimic what McDaniel did in San Francisco, and they just don't have the blocking and the personnel to really accomplish that. Um,
Yeah, and like Jalen Waddle's performance kind of went under the radar last week because he didn't exactly like blow up, but like he was very good. And so like I think like Tua with Waddle and Waller or Washington and Waddle just kind of really gets you kind of in that interesting spot. And then I also think that people are going to have a good bit of interest in the Chargers. Again, I don't know if they're going to full stack them because of the price of Herbert, but
yeah,
like I would guarantee that one of those Chargers receivers are probably chalk again. And so like that's going to get you access to that good chalk and like an interesting roster construction. So that's kind of
yeah.
like where those plays came from.
I had similar ideas, and last week I was very purposeful. Like I played when I wanted to flip the build off of Fields. I got direct leverage with Dallas and their pass catchers, playing with Pickens and Ferguson and stacking Dak. And that ended up actually being the best lineup, at least in my single entry contest, was Dak with Pickens and Ferguson. Not that Pickens had an incredible ceiling or anything, but just accessing that game environment in another way. So I could see myself coming up with some different scenarios where I do something similar. And if I'm going to eat CMC and Puka Chalk, I'm definitely going to want to do it in a unique way. And if I'm playing Bryce Young, it's not going to be with CMC and Puka.
Yeah, and then I also have one more like kind of crazy play that like I don't know if I'm gonna do, but I'll talk about it. So there's two guys that I like, and we've done this before. This is gonna feel very familiar to you. We've had this conversation. The episode didn't air, but we had the conversation. I'm coming back around to Jerry Judy and David Njoku, and because I like both of them, and we've talked about cheap quarterbacks, I might throw a couple dart throws at Dylan Gabriel and stack the team. The thing is that Jerry Judy and Njoku are both at like all-time low prices, and Dylan Gabriel is also like sub 5K, and you can play all three of them for like 11K. And like I actually think David Njoku, by the way, is an amazing play. He's 3.5K. He had 9 targets last week with Dylan Gabriel. Like I'm hoping nobody plays him because I think he's the best play on the slate if he comes in under owned. And then Jerry Judy with Dylan Gabriel was used in a lot better way. He still had his like, regular drops and everything, but like this Pittsburgh defense isn't like super good against wide receivers. They're not super bad either. It's like one corner's bad, one corner's good. It just depends on the matchup. And so like it's kind of like potentially too cheeky when there's like a lot of good spots. But I think that it's interesting if you wanted to play a low owned stack that no one's going to play.
Okay. Do you know the team that has the worst expected pressure this week? Without
It's the
looking,
Colts.
no. Who's expected to get the worst pressure they're facing?
Oh, I'm not sure.
I said the second worst already was the now Joe Flacco led Bengals. The only team that's expected to get more pressure in the pocket this week is Joe Flacco's previous team, the Cleveland Browns. So,
Yeah, I mean, I'm
um,
sure that'll happen, but at the same time, I think that the coach is just relatively good. Like what you're probably looking for at that is just like a couple quick throws where you break one big.
yeah, they
And
did
let
get
me
the
just
ball
come
out of his
back with
hands
that.
very quick.
I'll
Yeah.
also just come back with that Pittsburgh is the worst team on the slate against tight ends.
Okay. Well, if you're looking for value, I mean, I'm definitely interested in looking at
Like I said,
the
David
other.
Njoku is really the guy from that I like am going to play a lot of. I don't know that I'm going to get to any Jerry Judy or Dylan Gabriel. I just think that it's interesting, but like I am going to
Yeah.
play a lot of David Njoku. I think that he's probably the best tight end play on the slate.
Okay. Awesome.
Um, cool. So we talked through games. So I guess outside, before we wrap everything up, do you have any one-off player stands that you're kind of looking at this week? Are there anybody that's really stands out to you that you think might be a good play that nobody's talking about? What's like? What are you looking at?
So I think, I mean, this isn't the hottest take in the world, but if a lot of the ownership is going to condense around McCaffrey and Puka, I want to take an overweight stance on Jonathan Taylor. Um, the matchup, um, just looking here. Yeah, perhaps I was looking at last week. No, I know what I was looking at. So I was looking earlier at the Cardinals defense, and they actually have the worst. They have some of the worst rush defense in the league. Part of the reason that we haven't seen that really show up as much in the box score because their fantasy points against haven't been as high. They don't rank as high in that, but the reason is that you have to adjust for their schedule. The teams that they played were the Saints. I'd have to go back and look, but they've had a very easy schedule so far. The Titans. So rush success rate for them, they're actually 32nd in the league. Rush EPA versus attempts is 21st in the league. Overall defensive DVOA is 25th. I just think that flew under the radar a little bit, and the Colts have one of the higher implied totals this week. So I'm interested in getting access to that game, but I'm interested in taking an overweight stance if on Jonathan Taylor.
Interesting. So I've got a running back, a wide receiver, and a tight end that I'll give you that I feel these
Okay.
are. If I would play these guys whether they're chalk or low owned, if they're low owned, I would have probably 50% of all of them. Running
Okay.
back, Ashton Jeanty. We saw what happened last time he was in a good matchup. Then he had like an average matchup. He also saw like 7 targets last week, which is like a really good sign that we haven't seen in the past. And he's got a good matchup again. They actually have the third best running back matchup on the entire slate this week. Um,
Yes, they
against,
do.
yeah,
Yeah, the
I don't remember
Titans.
who they. Yeah, the
Yeah, they're
Titans, who
facing the
have like
Titans.
also
30
two
points a
bad
game.
teams. They really don't have anything.
Yeah,
And so even on the back end of that, as a secondary game stack, I really like the idea of Ashton, GT, and Alec A. Minor. I think this is the game that Alec finally breaks out. That's not my wide receiver play, by the way. It's my receiver play is a little bit more obvious, but like I think A. Minor is a really great play, especially with the secondary stack with GT.
I love
My
that. And
yeah,
the Raiders are giving up 40 fantasy points a game to wide receivers. I mean, and he's garnering a pretty large target share. And he's like 3,000 something.
yeah, he's like 3,600, and like I said, because everyone's going to play cheap quarterbacks and stuff, I really just don't know that everybody gets there.
Yeah,
So like I like that idea a lot. I think that's like a
yeah.
really sharp secondary stack that I have a lot of interest in. My wide receiver play is actually Jackson Smith-Njigba, who, because he's also so expensive, and you're probably picking him over Puka Nakua, I don't
Yeah.
think that a lot of people are going to play this week. He's got the second best matchup against Jacksonville for expected fantasy points out of any wide receiver. Carolina's number one, and for reference, the Rams are like I don't know, like fourth or something like that. I don't remember. They're a little lower,
Against
but
wide
yeah,
receivers or running against two?
wide receivers specifically.
Yeah. The Rams.
Like the
Let's
Rams,
see.
I'm talking about Baltimore against the Rams. Sorry. So
Yeah, Baltimore's got kind of a mid-range. Um, they're giving up like a decent amount of points to
they get
wide
shredded by
receivers.
slot receivers specifically, though. And so I'm curious. I think the last time I checked, Devontae Adams plays in the slot more than Puka does in this current version of the offense, but I'm not positive. That's not really. I'm not fading Puka, by the way. It doesn't really matter. But the reason I brought it up is because JSN is right next to him in pricing, and so everybody that gets to Puka is not going to get to JSN. Or the other really interesting thing I think is to fade Christian McCaffrey and play Puka and JSN together,
I like
two
that
high
better.
priced wide receivers instead of the other two, because we have Rashad White and Rigo Dowdle, who are both 6K again, and they're both
Yeah.
like good plays. And so like I think you can play two 6K running backs, two high priced receivers, and probably have another different build. But yeah, JSN is my like wide receiver play of the week. And then I talked to David Njoku already, but there is another cheap tight end that I have some interest in, which is Isaiah Likely. I know that like Cooper Rush is here and he like sucks and everything else, but like I think that bad quarterbacks target tight ends quite a lot. And while the Rams are relatively good at a lot of things, they actually get kind of crushed by tight ends that line up like as receivers. And so Mark Andrews probably plays in line, and Likely probably plays split out wide a little bit more, and he's 2,800 this week.
That would be thin for me in smaller field stuff, but I could definitely see that being. I mean,
Like I
he's
said, so
athletic.
like
Yeah.
you're gonna have to get to a point where you're playing Kendrick Bourne or Isaiah Likely or Joe Flacco.
Yeah. I'd like to find out what's behind the fourth door and play Alec Amanor, because I think
But
that one
like, do you
is.
want a lot of AM and OR? Because I don't. It's like I'm probably comfortable with like 15-20%.
Yeah.
But like with these guys, I think the most important thing is that you don't go over on any of them because we don't know who's going to hit. It's like you're
Yeah.
probably wanting, a couple of lineups with each of them and hoping you get the right one. And so I think the cool thing with Isaiah Likely, again, is that he would do a secondary stack with Puka Nakua or Kyron Williams.
Right.
And so if that game turns into literally anything, and Cooper Rush isn't that bad, by the way. Like I said, I know he didn't have like a good game last week, but he's like a
They faced
serviceable.
the best defense in the league too.
Yeah,
I
and
think
think
as
about when he
soon,
was on Dallas. He was serviceable. This Baltimore offense is not dead.
no.
He's way better than Jake Browning. I'm not saying he's a great quarterback, but like I think he can make fantasy performances out of some of these players. I don't think we have to write them all off. Like I said, and likely was seeing like 4 to 5 targets a game beforehand. At
Yep.
2,800, I mean, he catches one touchdown, you're good.
And one of the notes I had down too was if you're playing Puka, you should consider a bring back as well. I think that's another way that would be. I mean, we've all after 1 week written off the Ravens offense as not being able to do anything. But if Puka's hitting a ceiling, just talking probabilities, there's a decent chance that the Ravens, if they're passing into the fourth quarter, the Ravens are at least doing something. And I think if you're running Puka, no, most people are not going to have any kind of bring back. I think that could be a
Yeah,
sharp way
so
to
I
do it as
especially
well.
like Stafford, Puka, Kyron, and Likely is my last piece because he's 2,800.
Yeah. The matchup for Kyron is amazing, by the way, too, and he's priced way down. Um, the other thing too, if I wanted to mention in terms of players, Kyron Williams and Javonte Williams, who are both 6,300 and 6,400, have incredible matchups and projections this week. So if I'm looking to flip some builds, perhaps not paying up for an AK running back. I know I said I like Jonathan Taylor quite a bit this week because of how bad I perceive that Arizona defense, but I think another way to be unique could be stacking two of those mid-range guys and having two expensive wide receivers and maybe paying up at quarterback. I mean, if I'm going to be playing Josh Allen, then I'm going to need to get value somewhere else.
Josh Allen's not on the slate, by the way.
He's not?
No, he plays like Thursday or Sunday morning or something.
No, he doesn't.
The top quarterback that you have access to is actually Baker Mayfield at 6,600.
When does Buffalo play?
I
Are they? Wait,
went to look because
they're on Monday night. Oh,
yeah,
no.
I was like, how did I miss that? So I just went to look while you were talking about it.
My bad.
And so that's the other thing why the cheap quarterback is so good. By the way, it's because there's no top quarterbacks on the slate. We do not have Josh Allen. We don't have Lamar Jackson. We don't have Joe Burrow. We don't have Jaden Daniels. We don't have any of the top quarterbacks that actually went top 8 in ADP in fantasy football drafts are not on this slate.
Yeah.
And so essentially, all you need is for Baker, Dak, Stafford, Herbert, and Love to fail. If the 5 of them don't put up 30 points, a cheap quarterback is going to be optimal.
Okay. And if you're going to play Bryce Young, we need to find a creative way to do it. If he's going to be,
I'm not going to play Bryce Young, by the way, because here's something for you. You talked about the predicted pressures. His predicted pressure matchup is horrendous. It's absolutely horrible. I would not be playing Bryce Young in any way or any capacity.
Okay. We'll have to review those numbers together.
I hope that everybody plays Bryce Young because I want all the Rico Dowdle again.
Yeah, Rico Dowdle's going to have a massive workload, and I think the matchup for the Dallas, they've given up a bunch of points to running backs.
Especially
they're fifth most.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and he had a lot of catches, so if they are getting a lot of pressure, might he dump it to Rico Dowdle 5 or 6 times a game?
So I'm just seeing Carolina this week as being right at 50% pressure rate.
1 sec. I just had this up a second ago.
But if I'm going to be playing a contest where 25% of the people are playing Bryce Young, I'm not going to be playing Bryce Young there. But I said that last week about Fields.
Yeah, so the thing here that's scary is that his EPA when he's under pressure is negative 0.527. That's his quarterback play, right? So he's 0.120 in the positive when he's in a clean pocket.
Yeah, when he has a clean pocket, yeah.
When he's pressured, he's the 5th worst quarterback on the slate. And he's going to be pressured at an above average rate. And so, I personally would not be playing Bryce Young. I actually think I'm going to play Dallas's defense this week because Bryce Young is already a bad quarterback.
Yeah, well, you're going to get good leverage. I mean, they've been performing a little bit better. Well, not tremendously, but anyway, you're getting leverage if you do that.
The 3 quarterbacks that have good matchups but that are projected to get a lot of pressure that don't perform well under pressure are Bryce Young, Justin Herbert, and Mac Jones. And so, those are all 3 guys that I initially wrote down that I've put red X's through that I'm not going to touch.
Yeah, and something for, just to talk about what this show will include. I mean, this is something David and I are looking a lot at, and as we're going back week by week and looking at the expected pressure rates, the quarterbacks that are in stacks that are having the most success, we're definitely seeing a correlation between that. So I don't mean to be quoting off the wall stats, but offensive success, I mean, I think we're now getting to an age where we recognize that the game is won and lost many times in the trenches, and these pressure rates are helping us to determine which quarterbacks are going to be operating in clean pockets and which are going to be facing a lot of pressure, and who performs well in those situations.
I actually
do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I like off the wall stats, and I don't apologize in any way.
Don't apologize.
I'm a big believer that I know ball when it's on its own is dangerous. But when you're able to contextualize real life football with stats to back up your knowledges and what you think, that's when all this stuff gets really dangerous. And so like my for you guys that don't know, my personal brand is really rooted in like game theory, actual football knowledge, but backed up by like really good data and statistics to like contextualize everything that I'm looking at, so that it's not just like these like weird, insane biases that my brain comes up with. But yeah, I mean, as far as football goes, it's common sense. Like if you have a clean pocket, you're going to do well. And there's quarterbacks that perform well in bad situations. There's numerous quarterbacks out there. Baker Mayfield being one of them. That if you blitz Baker, he's not any less dangerous. He will
Baker's a
still shred
dog.
you. Yeah, he
He's a
will
dog.
100% still shred you. But then there's other quarterbacks like Jared Goff that it's a night and day difference. When he's unpressured in a clean pocket, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. When he's pressured a lot, he like kind of frazzles him and he doesn't do super well. And so
Hmm.
like there's just a lot of quarterbacks where like these kind of correlations like really make a lot of sense and matter. And so it's
Hmm.
like tiebreakers, like checking things out, especially when somebody's chalky. I think it's just a really good way to like contextualize what you're looking at.
Yeah. Yep. I want that. I was looking at team totals and pocket pressure, and we landed on a lot of the same stacks, um, and none of them were Carolina. So I really like the idea of playing a lot of Rico Dowdle, getting direct leverage if people are going to be condensed on Bryce Young.
I will happily fade Carolina. The reason I played Justin Fields as chalky as they were is because I thought even with the pressure he just run.
Yeah.
And so like a lot of my Justin Fields I actually played different than everybody. I played Justin Fields and Brees Hall with no Garrett Wilson. Like over 50% of my Justin Fields lineup were Justin Fields and Brees Hall.
Because you were just
Because I
playing the
thought he
running
would run a
attack.
lot and not throw. I didn't think he'd
Yeah.
throw. I just thought he was going to run for his life the whole game, and he
Yeah.
did. So like I ended up getting kind of burned at the end because Garrett wasn't caught that he had like 15 points. It really didn't matter.
Yeah,
But
19, but it was not, optimal.
yeah, but Bryce Young, while he might run a little bit, he might get an extra 3 points running the ball if he doesn't fumble. That's like not really his strong suit. So like I'm personally like I know this week, especially if he's chalky, that I'm fully comfortable fully fading that spot. I might play a little Tet, maybe, but I really want Rico Dowdle in that spot. Like I hope that everybody plays Bryce Young because it means Rico is going to come in like unowned.
Yeah, I like it. I think I'm going to be there with you. Oh my gosh.
And we just
Dominated
also
by
have so
Max
many good
Skipper.
games this week. It's like last week we really didn't have a lot of good spots. You had to like
Yeah.
really squint to see like something else that you wanted to play if you weren't playing Detroit or the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, but this week we have so many good games and so many good spots. So there's just no possible way that I'm playing terrible teams at chalk,
Yeah. I
especially
think
if
we
no one's
often
playing
find
Tampa Bay
ourselves.
and Seattle. Like I said, I think both of those teams are going to come in really under owned again, and I'm going to stack both of them for a ton of my lineups.
Yeah, I'm going to have a good amount of Seattle. I'm interested in Indy a lot too. I think I'm going to have some exposure to both the passing game and the running game there.
To end this off, I'm pulling up a lineup just to show you and everybody else kind of like what these builds look like that I've talked through.
Okay.
Like I said, because I think that we actually have a lot of really cool stuff that we can do this week. So let me share my screen. We'll go through a quick build real fast, and then we'll hop off.
Yeah, sounds good.
So if we talk about, we're gonna do Seattle here since we both kind of landed on Seattle, and like I
Yeah.
said, I kind of like took a stand on JSN as my guy this week. So Sam Darnold is still only 5,400, which is absolute
Oh
insanity.
man. Yeah.
You can
And
play
how much is Bryce Young?
47.
47. Okay.
Jackson Smith Njigba with Torrey Horton at 4,100. I don't want to play a Jacksonville player. I'm probably not going to have a run back on the majority of these. We can get. I'm going to take the Dolphins defense because I told you that Herbert's got like a pretty bad pressure matchup at 2,200. I think that's worth it. That's why I played the Titans last week, and it kind of paid off. They had like 9 points.
And
Um,
one thing to keep in mind, I looked at the injury report for the Chargers today. If Joe Alt and Mekhi Becton are going to be out again, like that, I'm wondering. I think those pressure rates are probably getting inflated because of the offensive line injuries there. But if they're out again, that's I think even more reason. Like
Joe Alt's out for the season.
he is.
Yeah, he's
Are
on
you
injured
sure?
reserve. I know he's on injured reserve. I mean, like it might not be the season, but like it's a while.
Um, he was on the practice report as DNP. I don't think so. I think you're thinking of the other. You're thinking of the other guy they signed to a massive deal.
Could be right.
Yeah. But either way,
Slater,
like they
Rashawn
have like
Slater.
cluster injuries on the offensive line. I like Miami there for 2,200, and you're getting some. If people are going to play the Chargers passing
So
attack, you're getting some leverage.
now that we're here, right? Look, I mean,
Okay.
we have 7,100 still.
Why don't we put in Puka and CMC and see what it looks
We
like?
can't do Puka and CMC. You're gonna have, like I said, on this one, we're gonna do two high price receivers. We are doing Puka. I thought we
Are
would
you
do
sure you
Puka.
can't, or you'd have to go really cheap on flex? Is that why?
Yeah, I mean, like I don't want to. I mean, you
Okay.
definitely can, but so like we're talking, like you could do Alec, I guess, if you really wanted to. But I kind of wanted to do Josh Jacobs at 7,300,
Okay.
and that leaves us with like you could do Pittman, who I like this week, Marvin Harrison Jr., who I also like this week. You could play the chalk with Chris Olave at
But
5,100 at this point. But like this lineup, I mean, if we think Bryce is chalk, you're getting the Rico Dowdle. You're getting the Rico Dowdle leverage. If we think CMC's chalk, you're getting the Puka, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, two high priced wide receivers leverage.
and
Um,
just before I move on, you could take that one step further, and if Pearsall plays for 50
he's not. They
something.
already said that he's probably out.
Oh,
I
okay.
do think that Kendrick Bourne's interesting though. He's 4K.
Okay.
Um,
Gotcha. Okay, I was just thinking of the leverage that could be gained. I mean, that would be like really large field to then do that, but okay. So
yeah, for
then you eat some
sure.
more chalk with Olave.
Yeah, I mean, I like
It's an
Pittman
awesome
here a lot
lineup.
too. But yeah, I mean, it really doesn't matter. Like I said, you have a lot of different stuff you could do here. And I mean, even outside of this, right? This 2v2 right here at the end, if you don't want to play Jacobs, you could play Ginty at 16. You could play Kyron Williams. You could play Ginty. You could play Javante and like
Yeah.
stack it back up that way. So like if we look at this when we play Kyron Williams, now at 6,400, you could do Brian Thomas. I don't really want that, but Waddle, no one's going to play. You can put Tet back in now. Zay Flowers is like a stack up back with, we played two Rams guys, so like Zay Flowers here.
hmm
There's just a lot you can
I
do
think
with a
that's
lineup
smart.
that looks
Yeah.
like this.
It wasn't that hard to
And if you
build.
wanted CMC, I mean, you can do that just to show everybody. So like if
And the
you
reason
wanted
I the
to,
reason I said that was we have a pretty unique stack, at least from our early week perception. Like, if you really want to run CMC and Puka together, you this could do this way.
yeah, I just don't know that CMC plus these bums down here
You
is
don't want to have to
technically
have too many
better
bums. Yeah,
is technically better than Josh Jacobs and Chris Olave
right.
from like
Because you
any
have to get the
standpoint.
bums right. Then it's hard to get a lot of bums
Yeah,
right.
I would just rather two 6K guys there, honestly. Like I said, like Gene T's
Yeah,
like my guy this week. So like, but like Gene T's probably too much leverage here. You'd probably want to play Josh Jacobs because he's going to be also relatively chalky. That's why I did what I
yeah,
did. Where like Josh Jacobs is probably going to carry ownership and it won't put you in like a crazy spot. He's got the best matchup on the planet.
yeah.
And then like I said, at 5,400, it's like me personally, I probably play Pittman. Honestly, I think Pittman's in a really good spot. I think Daniel Jones is in a really good spot. I think that's like a really nice spot against
Yeah.
Arizona.
And if I'm playing smaller field, which I'm probably going to do again this weekend, I'm probably just eating Olave there.
Yeah, like I said, I'm fine with Olave there. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is in a really good spot on the other side of that game. You can play Romeo Doubs and eat that chalk. Olave. You've got the two Chargers running backs, so you can take a coin flip there. You've got
Yeah.
Kendrick Bourne right here at 5K, which we just talked about as like CMC leverage. So like you could play Kendrick Bourne, and then that just lets you get a better defense. We could come back and play. Wow, it's really not any better, is it? We'll just stick this
Browns.
in here, I guess. Yeah.
No, Browns have a nice pressure rate against Rodgers, and he has not performed well under pressure.
So yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of really interesting things I think that you can do with stacks like this, where like taking just a cheap player from your stack, which Torrey Horton, by the way, just to show you guys. I mean, like 4 targets, 5 targets, 4 targets, 3 touchdowns this year. Jacksonville's absolutely horrendous against wide receivers. Like I actually
They
don't
really
think this
are.
is that bad of a play. Is in Seattle stacks. Don't play Torrey Horton by himself.
Yeah. I'm worried a little bit about how much his scoring's been dependent on touchdowns, but
Sure, but like I said, these are also pretty bad matchups, right? We had like Tampa Bay, we had Arizona, we had New Orleans, we had Pittsburgh and San Francisco. And these games like didn't shoot out in any way. It's like if Jacksonville scores points, which they can, Seattle's defense isn't a world beater. Who's to say that he wouldn't get 6 targets at 4,100?
I like it a lot. I like how this lineup came out.
Cool, man. Well, let's end this off by picking a player that like is your guy for the week early on. You don't have to like swear by this guy or whatever. I'm just gonna say like, for me this week it's Jackson Smith and Jigba. Like I think like that's like the guy that if I had to pick to be like a GPP winning play this early on in the week, Jackson Smith and Jigba is my guy.
Yeah, I'm gonna take Jonathan Taylor.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we got super crazy by picking 7 and 8K guys.
Well, I mean, I'm also perfectly fine to take David Njoku there, but that also feels like cheating because he's too cheap. It's cheating in the other direction. Cool, man. Well, as always, appreciate you for spending your evening talking football with me. Look forward to doing this again next week, seeing how we do. I think there's a lot of really interesting, unique angles on this. I also think it's the first time we've had tight pricing all year that like actually makes you use your brain.
Yeah, last week was mindless. Just click, 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 cheap running back. I mean, there was no reason to get away from it.
Yeah. I mean, like I should have played 80% Dowdle. I don't know why I didn't. I played 40, but that really wasn't enough.
Yeah. If everyone's if Bryce Young's gonna be the chalk this week, let him come beat us.
Man, I like Rico Dowdle. When he was a free agent, I wanted Washington to sign him so bad. I was like, he's so underrated. Like he could be our 3-down guy, and like. So like I like Rico Dowdle like a lot. I think he's better than Chuba Hubbard. He should be the starting running back, but that's a whole other story. But yeah, man, appreciate you for talking with me. Looking forward to talking next week, and have a good night.
Yeah, you too, David. Thanks. Good luck, everybody.